The distress signal came from Xerxes 4, a barren exoplanet long marked as no entry by every spacefaring civilization in the quadrant. It wasn't just abandoned, it was deliberately erased from navigational databases. No official records explained why, only a vague, unsettling advisory: do not land, do not answer, do not approach. Yet here it was, an automated distress beacon, its archaic frequency pinging deep space relays for the first time in 200 years. Captain Elias Vance of the salvage ship Odyssey stared at the flickering readout on his console, a pit forming in his stomach. "Could be a trap," his second-in-command, Rourke, muttered. He leaned over the console, his face illuminated by the sickly green glow of the transmission. "Or just old tech malfunctioning," Elias exhaled. "Or someone down there needs help." Rourke didn't look convinced. Or something. The rest of the crew was silent. They'd all heard the stories. Xerxes 4 was off limits for a reason, but Elias was already making his decision. "Prep for descent," he said. The planet's surface was wrong. The Odyssey landed in a field of crystalline spires, their jagged tips humming softly, almost imperceptibly. The sky was an unnatural shade of deep violet, and two suns, one bloated and red, the other small and dim, hung motionless on the horizon. Elias adjusted his helmet's audio filters. There was a faint sound, barely more than static, like whispers caught in the wind. The words were indistinct, but they sent a chill down his spine. This place is alive. Rourke and the rest of the crew, Danny, Kovac, and Lynn, moved cautiously, weapons at the ready. The distress beacon's source lay 1 mile east, near a derelict research station, its structure warped, almost melted. "Jesus," Kovac muttered. "What happened here?" The station's outer walls bulged inward, like something had tried to force its way inside. The metal plating was covered in dark, vein-like patterns, pulsating faintly. It reminded Elias of organic tissue. Lynn ran a bioscan. Her device glitched, flickering erratically before going dark. "This place is throwing out massive interference," she said, smacking the scanner. "Magnetics? Radiation? I don't know." "Let's move," Elias ordered. Inside, the station was a crypt. Desks were overturned, monitors shattered. Deep gouges ran along the walls as though something massive had torn through them. There were no bodies, only faint shadows on the walls, burned into the metal as if by an intense burst of heat. "Captain!" Danny's voice trembled as she pointed to a holographic log, still flickering. Elias activated it. The distorted face of a researcher appeared, eyes wide with terror. The audio was corrupted, but a few words came through. "We were wrong. The planet isn't dead. It isn't empty. It's waiting." Static swallowed the rest. Then something moved behind them, a shadow shifting where there should be none. And in that moment, Elias realized something horrifying. The whispers weren't in the wind. They were inside his head. Elias staggered back, his breathing ragged. The whispers weren't external. They were inside his mind, weaving through his thoughts like tendrils of static. "Leave." The voice was neither male nor female. It was layered, like 100 voices speaking in unison. Kovac raised his rifle, sweeping the dimly lit corridor. "Captain, something's here." The walls pulsed. They were breathing. Rourke grabbed Elias by the shoulder. "We need to go, now." But Elias wasn't listening. His eyes locked onto something in the dark. A door at the far end of the station, its frame twisted like melted wax. A sign above it read, "Primary Research Hold," and beneath it, hastily scratched into the metal, "Do not open." Danny cursed under her breath. That's where the beacon's coming from. The moment she said it, The door lurched. Something on the other side pressed against it, slowly, deliberately. The metal groaned, bulging outward like a drum skin stretched too tight. Elias swallowed hard. The station was empty. There were no bodies. So what was in there? The whispers grew louder. Elias approached the door despite every instinct screaming at him to run. His fingers hovered over the panel. The whispers sharpened into something clearer, something worse. "You've already seen us." A violent pulse of static exploded through his comms. His helmet display glitched, flickering images, fragments of video logs. A figure in a lab coat, standing in this very room, eyes black, mouth open, screaming without sound. A crew member's shadow peeling away from their body, moving on its own. A warning message flashing over and over. "Do not look at them." Elias blinked, and the images vanished. His hands were shaking. "We need to leave," Lynn whispered. "Now." But it was too late. The door snapped open. The room beyond was wrong. Not just destroyed, not just decayed. It shouldn't exist. A vast chamber stretched impossibly far, bigger than the exterior of the station should allow. Walls of shifting darkness pulsed like a heartbeat, and in the center, a monolith. Towering, smooth, blacker than space itself. Its surface moved, not with light, but with the absence of it. Danny let out a choked sound. The monolith knew they were there. A shadow peeled away from it, standing upright, forming limbs, a head, eyes, not eyes, empty holes. The figure mimicked Elias's stance, as if it had only just learned how to have a body. And then it smiled. The door behind them slammed shut. The air inside the chamber wasn't air. It was thick, pressing against their lungs like liquid weight. Elias's muscles locked as the shadow figure stepped closer, its movements lagging like a corrupted recording. It knew him. It was him. Every twitch, every breath, it copied them a second too late. Kovac raised his rifle. "Captain, what the hell is that?" The figure tilted its head. Its face flickered. For a heartbeat, it wasn't Elias's face. It was Danny's, then Kovac's, then something else. A blur of distorted features, each one half-formed, like a memory misremembered. Elias forced himself to move. "Back to the door, now." The moment he spoke, the figure spoke too, not an echo, but at the same time, the same voice, the same tone. "Back to the door, now." Elias's blood ran cold. It wasn't mimicking them. It was learning. The monolith pulsed. A wave of black light rippled outward, and suddenly, they were somewhere else. The chamber was gone. Elias was on the bridge of the Odyssey, his crew at their stations, the distress signal still blinking on his console. Normal, except Danny was standing too still. Kovac wasn't blinking. Rourke's lips were moving, but no sound came out. A sharp, razor-thin laugh curled through the air. Elias whipped around. The shadow figure was there, watching him, and now it had his face. "What do you want?" Elias whispered. The thing wearing his face took a step closer. When it spoke, its voice was Elias's, except something was missing. No inflection, no breath, like a voice stolen from a corpse. "We wanted to be seen." Elias's stomach turned. "We?" The Odyssey flickered. The bridge melted away, and suddenly he was back in the chamber, except his crew was gone. Number not gone. They were standing against the walls, frozen, eyes hollow, like they'd been absorbed into the shadows. The monolith pulsed again, and the whispers came all at once. "Now you see us." Elias's vision fractured. There was no Xerxes 4, no station, no Odyssey, just the black void stretching forever, and them, watching, waiting, learning. Elias's mind fractured. His thoughts stretched across time, past, present, and something else entirely. He saw the Odyssey flicker in and out of existence like a memory that never happened. The monolith pulsed again, and suddenly he was inside it, or it was inside him. The weight of infinity pressed down on his thoughts, crushing his sense of self. There were no walls, no floor, just an endless shifting darkness filled with faces. Hundreds, thousands, some human, others almost human. They flickered like dying embers, their expressions frozen in silent screams, eyes hollow, mouths open in an eternity of voiceless terror. They were the others who had come before him, the ones who had ignored the warnings, the ones who had seen. "What do you want?" Elias gasped, his own voice barely more than a whisper. The shadows shifted. A sea of silent, watching forms surrounded him. To become. The words weren't spoken. They were felt, vibrating through his bones. Something touched him, cold, insubstantial, slipping into his skin like tendrils of black smoke. He felt himself unraveling, not dying, not disappearing, changing. His limbs grew heavy, his breath slowed, his thoughts no longer felt like his own. The faces in the void stared back, and for the first time, he understood. They weren't trapped. They had become part of it. The monolith pulsed one last time, and Elias smiled. The distress beacon activated again. Somewhere in deep space, another ship received the signal. And just like him, they would come.